Welcome back to delve into the dark shadows of my youth. Let's kick this off with number 5, Brothers Lionheart. Released in 1977, this children's fantasy adventure movie begins with 2 children dying, one from sickness and one from a technical suicide. The movie then takes place in a seemingly nice afterlife, not for long though. A cruel tyrant named Tangle, a black knight aided by a fire dragon, has come to enslave and conquer the supposed land of peace, love and joy. This isn't even presented in a light fashion. We see the whole terror he's inflicting on the land. When he takes over Rose Valley, he orders his soldiers to build a high, spiky wall around the town to restrict people moving around. He also makes everyone stand in a crowd and randomly kills people within it to instill fear into people. As a sign of the blood he spills, his helmet has a red feather that one character in the book points out looks like it was colored with blood. As the 2 brothers begin building resistance movement underground, the tension got so high I couldn't look at the screen. There's a constant fear of death because the movie had shown it totally would go there. It goes up to the final battle, and some very nice recognizable characters are killed, some by being burned to death. Before, there were 2 incompetent henchmen who were speculated to be unfit for fighting in real life, which is proven in a nihilistic way when the valiant heroes cut them down with ease. Tangle, the cruel knight, was also killed by a dragon who turned against him. In retrospect, this was worse than if he was a normal, untouchable villain. In both the movie and the book, he is referred to as a knight from a distant land. Not lord, not general, not emperor, a knight. The amount of soldiers he brings isn't very large either. There could have been 100 people similar to him that just weren't interested in taking over the 2 valleys. After the battle, the dragon also dies as it falls into the river and is strangled by a mythical river beast. Then, the 2 brothers, one of which was mortally wounded in the battle, decided to end the misery via a dual suicide. Now, you might wonder why this depressing, fairly graphic movie was shown to me when I was 5 years old. Really? Only because of the author. Astrid Lindgren is one of the most famed children's book writers, with such classics as Ronja the Robber's Daughter, which was recently made in the Ghibli movie, Children of Noisy Village, and my personal favorite of her stories, Pippi Longstocking. A story by someone who wrote of an insanely rich girl who has monkey and a horse as pets, and also just happens to be the strongest girl in the world, is sure to be kid-friendly. People with their assumptions. I hope the same logic won't be applied to my filmography. That'd be awkward. Number 4. Once, when I was visiting Sea Life, my mother's an environmental scientist so we went often, we were shown a certain animated short. Before, I used to love going there to see the weird and cute fish and to know more fun facts about them. After this film experience, I've maybe gone once or twice. It was 20 minutes of cute little baby turtles and eggs broken, eaten, fried, deceased, and just mashed into bloody pulp the whole time. What? I don't want to see that. Thankfully, it was animated and not live action. I hate it when turtles are hurt though. Basically, that's my only issue with Cannibal Holocaust. Number 3. This one has the oldest me in any of these dramas. Imagine me, a boy just having turned 13, coping with school bullies, falling grades, allergies, and figuring out my sexuality. Believe it or not, it was a process of sorts, with some stumbling cock blocks on the way. This was probably the biggest one. If you think I'm laying the expectations a bit too thick, I assure you it's worth the wait. So, my bullies picked on me for every possible reason. My weight, my faith, my formal way of speaking, my taste in music, my taste in food, the video games I played, the fact I didn't and still don't use hardly any swear words, my beard that was growing way before theirs, anything really. I guess, in a way, I was that anime goth faggot you just wanted to punch. I was even called a Nazi a couple of times. I knew they were totally wrong about me, and to my delight, some insults led me to awesome things like techno music, anime culture, deeper art circles, and even horror culture I'm now very fond of. This was my mindset when a certain strong accented bully with a keen interest in sports threw me into a set of lockers yelling, "Out of my way, go jerk it to them anime titties." I had been a rather enthusiastic anime fan for a while at that point, and really liked the art style. It struck me just like that. There's sexy anime stuff out there? You might be face-palming quite hard at my mindset, but remember, I was fairly sheltered, just turned 13-year-old, whose only award at school was from a set of poetry. It was a new thought for me. Frankly, it was an awesome idea. Next time I was home alone, with no one else around, I went to look at the treasure at the end of the rainbow. My browser had a kids filter on it, so I couldn't access any actual adult sites. However, I set my YouTube account at that time to be 21 years old, and knew that I could get some passable stuff out there. My phone didn't have restrictions, but it worked instantly slowly and didn't allow me to watch pretty much any videos because of the super slow processing speed. Not to mention the screen was tiny. So, there I was, at the dark side of YouTube, 1080p full screen, pants down, ready for some hot anime action. I typed in the search bar anime bikini hot and clicked on the first choice. This was the moment that marked my doom. It started promising with 2 girls and 2 guys going swimming in an underground pool. Sure, I thought the place is a bit moody, but the red bikini on that chick is tight. Not to mention the other girl was hot too, in that shy way I've grown to love. She didn't want to take off her clothes, but finally did and joined the others with a cute blush. Then it showed an underwater shot of the chick in red adjusting her bikini, which I liked. In the background, one guy seemed to get a boner, which I didn't like. Then it turned out that the boner was a tentacle eel that went inside the girl with force and came out of her mouth and a bit from the ears too. And she began contort and grow tentacles out of her boobs and killed a normal guy who with the freak guy, and the only one who escaped was the nice girl. I was horrified and tried to desperately think how that could turn sexy in some way. And maybe it was just a nightmare she had, and now, happy and relieved, she'd strip and maybe fondle herself with. Instead, she looked at the horizon and saw a giant beast with maybe 100 kilometers of height, and her eyes burned and melted away from the slow shock. Not the gentlest first time. Thanks, hentai. It took about 8 months for me to be ready for next try. Number 2. Out of everything in this list, this was by far the easiest to access, and the second most dramatic as an experience. It's for 3 years and over, which would be E in America. It's named Heinähattu ja Vilttitossu, Straw Hat and Blanket Boots in English. It tells the story of a family with a mother, a father and 2 little daughters. There are some very normal everyday struggles to be dealt with. The older kid feels neglected, the younger kid feels entitled, the mother feels tired, and the father will only cook potato-based food for his family despite all objections from the said family. To help on the issues, 2 wacky twin aunties next door come to help occasionally. Sounds like a lot of fun, maybe even a heartwarming undertone. It can be that. I did honestly enjoy, for example, this random and hilarious scene with massive amount of colored dough. That's pretty much it. Outside of that very particular scene, the movie was sick, dirty and mean. Why is it kid movies are filled to the brim with malice anyway? Did any kid ever like them that way? This movie in particular seems like a combination of Michael Haneke's work and Nightmare on Elm Street. Imagine that. Seriously, think about it. Pause for a while, and think how this premise could be turned like that, and then continue on the video. Alright, I'll explain myself as clearly as I can. This movie treats its arguably main character very poorly. She's ignored by her parents, no one wants to sit down with her and talk about the stress and anxiety of the coming school year. Her sister first refuses to talk to her because of petty squabble, and then, when left alone, dares to stress her favorite book ever, and isn't really punished for it at all. The sister, she gets a talk about the importance of forgiveness. The next night, she sneaks out, goes to a big rock and prays to finally win something, namely the big race the next day. Lo and behold, the little sister wins because the mother, who saw her praying last night, decides to simply let her cheat in the race. When the big sister complains, she's called unreasonable and a problem child by all present. The end credits also show her walking into the school on her first day all alone. I don't know how it might work elsewhere, but my parents took me there on my first day. It made me feel much better and less nervous. The sisters aren't even the worst part, emotion-wise. The parents, in fact the father because the mother isn't even present that much, were the worst. Here's what the dad is all about. Potatoes. That's his gimmick. He only wants to feed potatoes his family because they are very healthy food. The family hates potatoes, but he still insists on them. This could have worked as a central idea for a children's movie if it was handled differently at least. Maybe like this. The father was a cook in a place that only offered potato-based foods. He loves his family, and since the mother has a 9-to-5 job, he makes all the dishes in the house. Love means potatoes to him, and more love means more potatoes. Eventually, when the daughters ask for spaghetti enough times, he has to admit the truth. He doesn't know how to make anything but potato dishes. The three proceed to try to make spaghetti together, which leads to a high hilarity cooking scene where they accidentally bake a wedding cake, for example. Finally, Mommy comes home to find the three sleeping around a small bowl of spaghetti, with the kitchen being really a mess. Wouldn't that be nice? The potatoes would still be there, and all the family infighting and tears of anger would be avoided. Not to mention this scene. Remember, this was rated E for everyone. It should have been rated sick for suicide and implied cannibalism for kids. Is this funny? Not really. It's a little girl's alarmingly realistic nightmare. Scary, sure, but not the kind this movie wanted. A better one would have been the same girl seeing the whole family as ancient and still wondering what spaghetti tastes like while eating potatoes. Instead, we got this sick scene, after which the girl is confronted by her father who made her new toy out of a potato. When I talked about the Nightmare on Elm Street connection before, this was what I meant. The horror and anguish are directly tied to a visual input. It can be a striped sweater and 4 fish knives, or a simple potato. Only adding to the horror is the fact that this element is flawlessly integrated into the real world, even in dream sequence. The biggest water container in a given house is bathtub, and for a fire to be put under it, it has to be outside. On the filmmaker's part, this obvious budget stretching means that they seriously wanted to show this scene to us. You decide what that means to you. I'm not going to force my opinions onto you. Just telling what I think and maybe 6 or 5-year-old me thought about this children's classic. Again, the same complaint. Kids movies that aren't kid-friendly by a long shot. I wish I'd watched Kiniro Mosaic Kotsumono wa Usagi desu ka or Kobayashi-chan Chino Made a Dragon instead as a kid. Now that I think about it, I really should have seen Sugochara. It could have helped me grow as a better person and cope with bullying. Number 1. I've tried to stay as far outside of in real life traumas, that is to say, those that didn't include a piece of media of some kind in this video. Things like the 5 separate times I almost drowned, once I even blacked out with the last slide before singing Powers being my dad laughing because he thought I was pulling a prank. Things like when a guy in my elementary school burned a lizard alive with a hot iron. Things like walking around an old farm building just to see that in between them there were tens of rats that were visually gutted with blood and innards everywhere. This avoidance is because those experiences are simple, one note, too quickly told, and not so analyzable and totally not replicable. However, here is an exception, since it's something that drastically affected my growth as a human being and still does to this day. Vaaratonta iskua ei ole. Or in English, there's no harmless punches. It was a feature presentation that was shown to the whole second class in the elementary school in my city, and apparently elsewhere as well. As the name gives away, it was an anti-violence presentation, an effective one as well. We were shown graphs, told stories, heavily informed, and many exceedingly traumatized. Imagine you were 7 again. You're told a story that starts, Mike and Johnny were pals at school, and one day they planned a prank. Funny, right? The prank was, Johnny would bend over and Mike would throw mutual friend's son into him, making surprise son fall to the ground. Hilarious, ain't it? Son hit the floor head and shoulders first. Then, the rest of him made contact. Human spine is shaped like an S, so that rose his head higher than it was before. It slammed back down like a whip onto the school's tile floor with a small crack. It took Son a long time to get up, all the while Johnny and Mike laughed. After a quarter or so, he complained about the headache and was sent to the school nurse. She sent him straight to the hospital, and in a few hours, Johnny and Mike were murderers, and Son was no more. The second hit had broken a teeny tiny artery inside of his skull, and his blood had been trickling directly onto his brain, building up pressure and eventually mushing some brain matter in the useless mess, and one by one taking away skills like walking, talking, and even affected thinking, not to mention the infernal headache he had until his ultimate death. Away from family and friends, even parents who had work and weren't informed fast enough. Comedy cold! I'm not talking this way to be edgy or something, but this was the most horrifying experience of my life so far. And that was only the first story. We were shown pictures. Pictures of this guy who wanted to be a basketball player, who one guy decided to pull a choke and jump onto his legs. And that caused both of the bones in his legs to snap, and he could never walk again, and couldn't even dream of ever playing basketball. We were also shown some very graphic scenes of these people punching each other in the face, and it dislodging the bone in the bridge of the nose, and it plunging itself into brains and piercing the front lobe. Seriously, it was life-changing. Never since then have I ever been in a fight, nor have I ever really punched anyone or kicked or anything like that. I've tried to resolve all my conflicts very peacefully from there on. I still remember it like it was yesterday. I guess it's going to haunt me forever. You might think I'm hypocritical because the content on Troceleng Studios channel, where I'm the main writer and animator and director, is quite violent. But the thing is, that's not real violence. Real violence is the kind that hurts people, where any amount of it could possibly end a human life. I wasn't even the only one who took it very seriously. This is a very bizarre part, but when I turned to my friend who was sitting next to me, he had his eyes wide open, staring at the ground, and I could hear him whispering something very faintly. And when I got closer, I could hear that it was a constant dream of swear words, and he was crying. So, there's no harmless punches. And probably no harmless PowerPoint presentations either. So, here's where this video ends. It took a ton of work, a lot of self-examination, and I even had to work quite hard to find the things I remember from my childhood. And even then, some of them I simply couldn't find anywhere. I hope this video was enjoyable in some way, maybe. Yeah, I know that some of these subject matters were uncomfortable to listen, to say the least. But the thing about that is, I wanted to be very authentic in this video. Only some parts were scripted were absolutely necessary. Mostly I was living at the moment, telling you what I thought when I was a kid. And that does include some pretty awkward confessions about my character as a kid. Not so much about how I am now. But I guess if you're watching my channel, you know about it anyway. I'm very grateful you watched this. Please comment down below about your experiences, about what you think about this video. Would you like to see something similar in the future? Because honestly, this was an interesting project. I'll see you next time, and again, thank you.